Commander Rhea Stone's reputation had already spread across half the galaxy by the time she stepped aboard the Zar'quin flagship. Known for her ability to endure extremes that would shatter most beings, she was a figure of both curiosity and fear to the alien species who only heard tales of the so-called Deathworlders. In the galactic community, Earth had earned the ominous title of a death world, a planet classified for its volatile weather, fierce predators, and demanding survival conditions. Only the strongest beings could thrive in such an environment, and Earth's humans had evolved accordingly. As one of Earth's elite soldiers, Rhea was a prime example of that resilience. The Zar'quin Empire, technologically advanced and formidable in warfare, had developed a device meant to erase even the toughest adversaries from existence: the Annihilation Chamber. Initially, it was used as a weapon of finality, reserved for the most dangerous criminals and threats to the Empire. A select group of Zar'quin scientists had engineered the chamber to obliterate living and non-living matter, stripping it down to subatomic particles, leaving no trace behind. The chamber was the Zar'quin's unbreakable solution to any creature bold or foolish enough to challenge their rule. There were whispers of rebellion in distant systems, but the mere mention of the Annihilation Chamber kept insurgents in line. Rhea, however, was intrigued. She had survived hostile atmospheres, lava flows, deadly storms, and alien predators. She was no stranger to facing annihilation head-on. When the Zar'quin invited her to test her resilience in their vaunted chamber, she accepted without hesitation. To her, it was another challenge, another gauntlet to run, another chance to prove that she and her species were made of something far beyond the understanding of these aliens. As she approached the chamber door, the Zar'quin officials around her watched with expressions that flickered between nervous curiosity and outright fear. They had always believed that no living creature could survive what lay inside. This chamber was their ultimate weapon, their cosmic eraser. The Annihilation Chamber was a marvel of Zar'quin engineering, a dark metallic sphere at the heart of their flagship, humming with dormant power. It was constructed from an alloy so dense that it was impervious to physical breach or decay, with walls layered in alien circuitry pulsing with a steady, ominous blue glow. The chamber was calibrated to unleash an energy blast potent enough to disassemble any organic or inorganic matter at the atomic level. By design, it was an executioner's tool, originally conceived to handle threats deemed too dangerous for any traditional containment or imprisonment. At the core of the chamber, complex circuits wove intricate patterns into the walls. Each node connected to an arcane source of energy the Zar'quin kept secret even from their closest allies. The energy used in the chamber wasn't a mere plasma or electromagnetic wave, but a unique, resonant frequency capable of disrupting the bonds between atoms. This energy was known among the Zar'quin as Shattuck's breath, a force harvested from a distant, hostile star that had collapsed into an energy-rich singularity. Over decades, they had harnessed its power, encoding it into the chamber's very framework. Once activated, the chamber's walls would illuminate with searing, venomous green light, signaling the beginning of the annihilation process. The energy coils embedded within would converge on the subject in a tight, blinding beam, the chamber itself becoming a crucible of obliteration. The Zar'quin boasted that the entire process, from activation to vaporization, took less than 3 seconds. And in those moments, the living target would endure sensations beyond comprehension as its very molecules were torn apart, leaving only empty space in the wake. The Zar'quin had always taken pride in the chamber's unbreakable record. No organic matter, not even the toughest alloy, had ever withstood the energy field within. Criminals, warriors, even rare beast specimens, all had fallen in seconds, their remnants evaporating into nothingness. The Zar'quin often watched the annihilation process with grim fascination, seeing it as a display of their ultimate mastery over life and death. The alien observers clustered around the chamber's monitoring consoles, their eyes wide and unblinking, their hands trembling as they watched the screens. Each of them held their breath, awaiting the inevitable blip that would mark the end of the human inside. To them, Commander Rhea Stone was just another test subject, a curious anomaly, perhaps, but bound to disintegrate like all the rest. They watched the readouts with fascination tinged by fear, not daring to believe that even a deathworlder could resist the chamber's fury. Some of the younger technicians glanced nervously at one another, unsure whether to look away or stay fixed on the screens. The Zar'quin high scientist, Frackhar, stood at the forefront, his long, narrow fingers clenching and unclenching around his data pad. He had overseen the chamber's construction, had tested it on creatures across 100 worlds, and yet something about this experiment made his skin crawl. The confidence he once wore as armor began to fray as he watched the energy readings spike and dip in erratic bursts. Frackhar had studied human physiology, knew their muscle density, their bone structure, their unique biochemical resilience. But the data had shown only a slight elevation in pain tolerance compared to other species. Nothing could have prepared him for what he now witnessed on the screens. The seconds ticked by, longer than they should have, and the chamber's lights surged in intensity, filling the room with an ominous green glow. Technicians whispered in uneasy tones, recalculating energy outputs, rechecking configurations, convinced there must be a malfunction. One young Zar'quin scientist's hands shook as she muttered, "Why hasn't the disintegration sequence completed? No creature can withstand such force." Her supervisor silenced her with a sharp glare, but couldn't hide the uncertainty in his own eyes. As the annihilation beam intensified, every Zar'quin present grew still, paralyzed by disbelief. Their stares flickered between the screens and the pulsing green light in the chamber, unable to comprehend what was happening. Data flooded their displays, spiking and dipping in ways that defied the parameters they'd set. The energy consumption was astronomical, yet the sensors were still detecting a living organism in the chamber. For a species as analytical as the Zar'quin, the prolonged readings of human vital signs left them stricken with unease. Another few seconds passed, and a ripple of horrified murmurs spread through the room. Frakkhar's mouth went dry as he saw the readings continue to display signs of life, a sight so alien and unfathomable that he began to doubt the very instruments he'd calibrated himself. Inside the chamber, Rhea Stone stood firm, her breath steady and her muscles locked in defiance as the annihilation beams flooded around her. The energy ripped at her skin, a searing, clawing force that seemed intent on tearing her apart at a cellular level. But Rhea had faced the ruthless elements of Earth, from desert heat that felt like fire to Arctic cold that clawed into her bones, and each time, she had come out the other side. Her training and experience had made her acutely aware of her limits, yet she sensed this ordeal went beyond mere survival instincts. There was something deeper, primal, inside her that met the chamber's force with a strength neither she nor her observers could explain. Every cell in her body felt alive, vibrating under the weight of the energy coursing through her. She could feel it lapping at her insides like a tidal wave, attempting to fragment her into oblivion. Yet something within her pushed back, a defiant will bred from generations of Earth's hardships. Her heart pounded like a war drum, each beat sending a pulse through her body, as if to say, "I am still here." Her mind sharpened with focus, overriding the primal fear that any creature would feel when faced with annihilation. Her resilience wasn't just physical, it was mental, a discipline honed to withstand any pain, any despair. In that moment, her spirit was a fortress. Her skin tingled as the energy continued to intensify, but she drew upon memories of Earth's extremes to ground herself. Freezing nights in desolate tundras, volcanic wastelands, jungles that devoured the careless. The punishment Earth itself had inflicted upon her species had shaped them, forged them into something the galaxy had never encountered. As each atom of her being was pressured to fragment, her body seemed to adapt, to take the assault in stride, absorbing the annihilation energy and resisting its influence. Her bones, her muscles, her very cells seemed to respond to the assault as if they were defying an ancient cosmic challenge. As if Earth's brutal lessons had imprinted in her genetic code, a reminder that she and her kind were not easily erased. Her DNA seemed to shift, tighten, bind itself stronger with every assaulting wave, each second ticking by as a testament to human endurance. She focused, every nerve alert, harnessing every ounce of her willpower to remain intact. Rhea's every sense was heightened, her awareness so acute that she could almost feel the life force within her fighting back, a silent scream of defiance against the Zar'quin's weapon. The chamber doors slid open with a slow, metallic hiss, releasing a thin cloud of vapor that billowed out and dissipated into the air. The Zar'quin scientists and officials leaned forward, straining to see through the haze, their eyes widening in uncomprehending shock as a figure began to emerge. Commander Rhea Stone, Earth's Deathworlder, stepped out of the chamber, her outline sharp and her movements steady. Her uniform was singed, small wisps of smoke rising from the seams, but she stood tall, unscathed, as if the Annihilation Chamber had been no more than a light workout. Her face was calm, her expression one of faint curiosity, and yet there was something in her gaze that unsettled the gathered Zar'quin, a glint that spoke of an inner strength they hadn't thought possible. The scientists, who had observed countless annihilations with clinical detachment, now stared in speechless disbelief, unable to reconcile the data on their screens with the reality before them. One technician dropped his data pad, the device clattering to the ground as he whispered in horror, "This cannot be. She should not be alive." The high scientist Frakar's hand quivered, barely able to hold his analysis tool steady. He studied her, his mind scrambling for explanations, for any possible error in their readings or a miscalibration of the chamber. But the results were unmistakable. She had endured the annihilation field, a feat that no other creature in the galaxy had accomplished. She had emerged from the Zar'quin's ultimate weapon without a single injury, leaving every Zar'quin present feeling a wave of mingled awe and dread ripple through the room. Rhea paused just beyond the doorway, running a hand over her arm as if brushing off dust. Her skin bore the faintest sheen, still charged with the residual energy of the chamber, but her breathing was steady, controlled. Her eyes swept over the alien officials, unflinching, meeting each gaze with an intensity that made several of them involuntarily recoil. It was as if, in that moment, they were confronted with something they could neither quantify nor control, a living defiance of their greatest technology, a living testament to the tenacity of a deathworlder. Some Zar'quin officials exchanged glances, whispering in frantic tones as they clutched their data pads and rechecked every recording, hoping to find a reason, an explanation for the impossible. But the truth remained. She had survived, a feat that shattered their every assumption about biology, endurance, and the limitations of sentient beings. They watched her with expressions that bordered on reverence, mixed with the unmistakable edge of fear. For in Rhea Stone's unscathed figure, they saw a threat that lay beyond their understanding, something primal and indestructible. As Rhea Stone stepped out of the chamber, every Zar'quin official present struggled to make sense of what they had witnessed. The human had walked out unscathed from a device meant to erase life at its most fundamental level. The Zar'quin prided themselves on their understanding of biology and molecular physics, but nothing in their knowledge could account for how a deathworlder from a relatively primitive world had resisted annihilation. Questions buzzed among the gathered scientists like an unrelenting swarm. Was her survival some anomaly in human physiology, or was there something unique about this one individual? Some speculated in hushed voices that her resilience might be tied to Earth itself, the legendary Deathworld that the galaxy spoke of with both fear and fascination. Zar'quin scholars knew of Earth as a planet of constant threats, harsh climates, merciless predators, and terrain that punished the weak. Life there evolved not to avoid death, but to adapt, to withstand, and to push back against every challenge thrown its way. Had these deathworlders developed cellular mechanisms, a hidden resilience that made them almost impervious to forces that would obliterate other species? Others murmured theories that she possessed some unknown, ancient power, or that Earth's humans were host to biochemical traits that defied conventional biology. Some believed that humans were merely primitive brutes, bolstered by luck and myth, but seeing Rhea now shattered their preconceptions. The Zar'quin were faced with a riddle more complex than any data set could unravel. Perhaps it wasn't just physical resilience at work. Perhaps it was something embedded in the psyche of humans, a psychological and biological harmony that defied annihilation itself. High Scientist Fraccar felt an uneasy chill as he watched her, unsettled by the calm she displayed. It was as though she knew something beyond the reach of his science, some insight or strength that could not be probed or measured. Her expression held no bravado, no boastfulness, only a quiet certainty, as if the knowledge of survival was woven into her very being. Fraccar realized with a growing sense of dread that he was witnessing the edge of his species' understanding, the boundary of a mystery that lay buried in the marrow of this human and the violent, unyielding world that had shaped her. Each Zar'quin official realized, in their own way, that this human survival represented a challenge to their empire's supremacy. Rhea Stone was more than just a soldier. She was a living enigma, a reminder that even the mightiest of empires could encounter beings beyond their understanding. They felt a dawning awareness that their galaxy might hold other deathworlders, other mysteries that no weapon or device could contain. Conclusion. As the Zar'quin officials retreated, their eyes filled with a mixture of reverence and apprehension, Rhea Stone remained standing in the center of the alien ship, her unscathed form a testament to Earth's resilience. The realization that she had endured their most lethal creation rippled through the Zar'quin Empire, stirring doubts and fears in its ranks. For the first time in their storied history, they faced the prospect that they might not understand everything, that their ultimate weapon had failed against a creature they had considered lesser. Rhea gave the chamber one last glance, her expression unreadable. For her, it had been just another trial, one more instance of humanity pushing past impossible boundaries. She felt the stares of the Zar'quin around her, knew they saw her as something beyond the grasp of their science and their power, and she let them keep their mystery. It was enough to know that her people, her deathworlders, had shown the galaxy something it had forgotten. Strength was not measured in technology or power, but in spirit, in the unyielding will to survive. With a calm nod, Rhea turned and strode down the ship's metallic corridors, leaving the Zar'quin to their calculations and fears. She was certain they would continue their studies, perhaps even seek other deathworlders to test, to understand. But as she walked, a sense of quiet satisfaction settled over her. Earth's people didn't need to be understood. They only needed to endure. And somewhere in the depths of space, Rhea knew other deathworlders were out there, each with their own challenges, each carrying a piece of humanity's defiant spirit into the stars. And so, Rhea Stone became a legend, a quiet reminder to the galaxy that not all mysteries could be solved, and not all threats could be erased. For as long as there were deathworlders, there would be those who defied annihilation, and in the vast darkness, the galaxy would remember the one who walked out of the Annihilation Chamber unbroken.